What's going on, you guys? It's your girl Monia Araya here with the Lift Your Voice Be Heard podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I want to do an emotional temperature check. Okay, there's a lot of things going on in our world that we are facing, daily, dealing with a way to combat the coronavirus. The world is opening back up, we're getting a little bit of our livelihood back, with parks being open and being able to go shopping if that's your thing, or whatever it may be as far as connecting with your friends, your family, and having small gatherings. We also have been dealing with protest for Black Lives Matter, protesting against police brutality, protesting against systemic racism, protesting against institutional racism. Right now, there is a movement happening to shift the way in which our country has been built. Our country has been built on laws that suppress and oppress melanated people, Black people in particular. And now we are in a revolution and an evolution, really, to create a healthier country, to create a healthier lifestyle where everyone can be and live their lives as first-class citizens, where you can walk out of your house and not fear for your life just because of the color of your skin, right? So there's a lot of emotions that are running high now, and not all of those emotions are good, and not all of those emotions are bad. It's a very humbling experience to witness the transformation of what's going on right now. People from all different ethnicities, all different backgrounds, all different lifestyles are actually coming together in a unified manner to protest the injustice of this country, and speaking up, not just for, speaking up so that Black lives can matter. Because once Black lives actually matter systemically and institutionally in this country, then that breaks way for all lives to matter. Right? So there's a lot of work being done. There's a lot of advocacy being done. There's a lot of allies really stepping up, really out here on the front lines, boots on the ground, and really, standing in their truth, standing in their power unapologetically. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to witness. It's a very humbling thing to witness. As a Black woman growing up in this country, I grew up in LA, and I grew up in West LA, because I know some people would be like, well, what part of LA? But anyway, I grew up in West LA. So West LA is very diverse. I went to Fairfax High School on Fairfax and Melrose. When I went there, it was the #1 diverse high school in the county, right? So you have I grew up with a melting pot. LA is a melting pot, and so you don't really think about racism like that, to be honest. You think about what you read in the books. That if you go to a certain neighborhood, then you have to be more aware of your surroundings. You have to understand, like, you cannot do certain things. You have to carry yourself in a way that, you can leave your house one day and come back alive, period. So, I just wanted to touch on, the mental and emotional state, as well as spiritual state of, what people are dealing with, what people are feeling, what people are facing. I know for me, it's been a very emotional and traumatic couple of years, really. And I didn't really realize that I didn't know how to process my trauma until my friend reached out to me and wanted to do kind of like a community get together and not have like blacks educate whites because she's a white woman, but kind of have it to where our voices can be heard, right? And we can come together as a community, as a village, and start healing, but that in itself, it's kind of problematic for Black people if we don't know how to process our trauma. I can get up here and educate you all day about the true African history, the true Black American history that has been, swept under the rug and hidden basically in plain sight. I can get angry and say, let's look at the criminal justice system. Let's look at the 13th Amendment. Let's look at the dismantling of Black Wall Street. Let's look at Boley, Oklahoma, which was the equivalent of Black Wall Street. Black greatness is embedded in the soil of this country, but it continues to be ignored. It continues to be suppressed and oppressed. And for what? Why? You have to think about that. And so when I think about it, like a friend of mine made a very valid point, like America was never built to have freedom, true freedom for all of its citizens. If it were, then you wouldn't have a clause in the 13th Amendment saying that, sure, slaves are emancipated, but except for if they commit a crime. So what happened? The slaves that were free were eventually, placed into a jail system, whether they did a crime or not. How many cases in America have we witnessed over the years, over the decades, of innocent Black men being charged for crimes that they never committed? Major one in particular, Emmett Till, young boy from Chicago, I think he was about 14, supposedly whistled at this white woman, and grown white men murdered this child. Years later, take that back, decades later, the white woman that accused Emmett Till of, whistling at her actually confessed and said she lied about it. She lied about it. I can remember being 11 years old, John Burroughs Junior High School, and seeing this young boy in his casket. His mother had an open casket funeral just so the world can see what these hateful white men did to her child. And he lost his life the way he did, all based on a lie. All based on a false sense of power. Right? So that's just one instance, of Black people, Black men in particular. Not saying that Black women haven't been subjected to the same type of brutality, but Black men in particular have been picked out, have been picked out to be dismantled, to be emasculated. You have to think about why. Think of the power that a Black man holds just within his genetics. Just within his genetics. Okay? They always say DNA doesn't lie. DNA doesn't lie. At the end of the day, African people, melanated people, their genes are dominant. If you're not an African, melanated person, more than likely your genes are recessive. So if you think about it, Black people have the power genetically to wipe out any recessive genes. Right? So let that sit in. So for me, I understand, I look at it from a survival state of mind. Okay, if I am a group of people that feel inferior to another group of people who always seem to have so much strength, always seem to be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, no matter the situation that they are placed in. A group of people that always seem to excel and make it out of whatever oppression that they are subjected to. A group of people that always seem to come together and unify to create, a group of people that comes together to unify the power of their voice, right? You think about every time a great leader was assassinated, it's because they were mobilizing the people. Okay? So you think about why one group in particular has been singled out to be completely dismantled. I remember reading when the Black Panther movement started, and they were mobilizing, Black communities were mobilizing and unifying and lifting up their communities all on their own, right? J. Edgar Hoover, who was a director of the FBI, said that the Black Panther Party is public enemy number one. And that is because Black people were coming together and unifying. Black people were finally coming together and taking a stand for their rights, right? They had the right to bear arms just like any other American. But like I said, the Constitution was not written for Black people to have the same rights. So you have to start looking at things from, okay, why is it that throughout history of America, we have yet to pay reparations to this group of people that gave us a 400-year head start? Why is it that we cannot look at our systems and institutions and say, now it's time for change? Now it's time to correct a wrong that is way overdue. It's all about power. If you have the power to write laws, if you have the power to write history books, then you control the narrative. You control the truth. Ultimately, right? So it's about power. Jon Stewart, I was watching this little clip from the Breakfast Club where Jon Stewart got on there and he said, Black people have been fighting for way too long for equality, when really the fight needs to be about equity, right? We all know that equity is produced through real estate, through land. If we were given 40 acres and a mule after slavery ended, then boom, we would have equity in this country, right? But that didn't happen. So we as Black people, we as Americans have to figure out a way to right the wrong of our past. Because if we don't, then our future will look just as harmful, just as traumatic as today, as well as the past. So we have to start doing the work now to heal our mental state of mind, to heal our emotional state of mind, to heal our spiritual and physical state of mind and well-being. We have to start coming together collectively as brothers and sisters, as one human race, right? Violence only begets more violence. But you can't blame a group of people who have been subjected to violence for centuries to not wake up one day and fight back. Period. You can only be pushed into a corner and up against a wall for so long before you have no other choice but to defend your life, to defend your character, right? So what we have to do now is change the hands of power. We have to change the hands of power if we are ever to be equal in this country. If every citizen is to be equal in this country, we have to start having those difficult conversations, right? I could tell you the other night, I cried in my bed. That's all I can seem to do is cry. When I mention black men, I get emotional and just start crying. Even now, it's just this feeling of fear, this feeling of anxiety. You know, I don't want to raise kids in this country, right? I don't want to have to worry about if my child is going to come home today because he went out and was mistaken for a criminal based on the color of his skin and not the content of his character. Right? There's certain states I won't even go to, period. You know, and I've never been the type to really even be worried about racism like that. But as a black person, there's certain things that you think about, you have to think about just for your safety and your well-being. Right? And so, I'm going to tell you like what I cried about the other night. Like I was watching a video on Facebook and this black gentleman lives somewhere down south. He got stopped. I guess there was a robbery or something in the neighborhood. He got stopped. He's talking to this officer. This officer's body camera is on. And, you know, he's cooperating fully with this officer. You know, he's like, call my sister. She lives in Florida. The man has so much gumption about himself, so much power, you know, and it was a beautiful thing to see. Gave the officer his identification. Officer identified him. Out of nowhere, this older white gentleman or white cop walks up to him, doesn't say anything to him before he proceeds to grab his hands and say, put your hands behind your back. And he's like, the black man is like, oh my God, what are you doing? And the white officer says, put your hands behind your back. Do as you are told. You walk up to an American citizen who is unarmed, fully cooperating with another police officer. You don't identify yourself. You don't even greet him. You proceed to touch him. You proceed to put your hands on him. And then say, do as you are told, as if he is a child. That man had to be at least 50 years old. But you're telling him to do as he is told, as if he is a child. The officer that tells this black man to do as he is told proceeds to body slam this black man to where when he hit the ground, he landed on his jaw, dislocating or breaking his jaw. When 4 other cops come to place handcuffs on this innocent black man, the officer says this man, or when one of the officers actually tells the black man why he is being arrested, they say, we have a warrant for your arrest. And at that point, that's when the original officer said, no, this is the wrong guy. The other suspect is down the street. And then the incompetent cop who has his knee on this black man's back says, oh, this isn't the guy? No, it's not the guy. And instead of you having a bit of professionalism, you didn't even consult with your colleague about what was going on with that gentleman. You didn't have enough competency to actually assess the situation. You understand? So there is a lot of unbelievable behavior going on from people who have badges and who have sworn to protect and serve this country. When that black man got up from the ground, the officers that proceeded to arrest him and place handcuffs on him finally wanted to be nice. Hey, buddy, take a seat. The ambulance is coming to check you out. That black man stood there in silence. You could see that his spirit was broken. You could see that he was so embarrassed. And all I could do was cry. because that man's livelihood had been taken away when he did everything that officer asked him to do. Completely complied with that officer. And yet he still got treated like a criminal. He still got assaulted. And towards the end, when they let the man go, all you could hear is profanity. Because the officer knew he messed up. Right? So I say that to say this. Sometimes your black friends and black people won't always have the strength to have those conversations with you. Although you may mean good, although you want to be a part of the fight, sometimes we need a moment to emotionally process where we are, to mentally pull ourselves up and heal the scars that are within us. Because a lot of us have trauma. Okay? No matter the person, the personality, I'm very sure we as black people are affected by what is going on in this country. Whether we have had firsthand experiences or not. Just the fact of being a black melanated person, you feel some type of way. Right? And at the same time, you have to be mindful of where you allow your feelings to go. Feel your feelings, process your emotions, process your thoughts, process where you are in your spirit before you go out and try to have those difficult conversations and explain emotions that you don't even have words for. It is okay to say no sometimes. I don't have the strength to have this conversation with you. I don't have the strength to show up today. Right? It is okay to be upset. It is okay to be hurt. But don't you dare lay down in defeat. Don't you dare let somebody else tell you your worth. Don't you dare let somebody else tell you your value. Because you are valuable. You are enough just as the way you are. But now it is time to be more strategic in what you allow into your life, what you allow into your environment, and how we will proceed moving forward. We cannot walk forward without a plan, period. They say planning to fail is failure to plan is planning to fail. So we have to have a plan on how we are going to change the reality that we live in day in and day out. Right? So let's show up every day for ourselves first. Because we are only human. And the mind is a very, very delicate thing, but also a very powerful thing. So we have to start using our power to our advantage. We have to start surrounding our lifestyles and our environments with people and things that actually speak life into us. We have to start looking out for our well-being as a number one top priority. Okay, so I wanted to speak on that today. I've been getting these text messages and having phone conversations, and people really want to come together and speak about it. And sometimes sometimes I just don't have the strength to speak about it. And sometimes I have to sit down and process my emotions and my feelings. I don't want to live in a life where I feel paralyzed when having to talk about trauma, having to talk about my stance. I don't want to be perceived as this angry, closed off person, because that's not who I am. I'm a very, very open-minded person, very understanding person, but everyone is human. And we all have a range of emotions that we feel and experience every day. So I wanted to just say, take care of yourself and be mindful of where you are within yourself. Be mindful of what it is that you need. Put your needs first, because that is the only way to lead a healthy life. And that is the only way to lead a healthy movement. You have to take care of yourself. You have to look out for your well-being and the well-being of your comrades. And sometimes that means space. And really just diving into processing your emotions and feelings. So that is the episode for today for the Lift Your Voice, Be Heard podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. I know it's pretty long today, but hey, things got to be said, and we got to start moving forward in our progression and in our unity as a country. There's a lot of things that need to be changed, and there's a lot of work to be done. So this is your girl, Monae Arias, signing out from the Lift Your Voice podcast. Y'all have a blessed day.